Ready to go? All right. Thank you, everyone. Next, we have Jill Lizier, and I'm going to let Jill introduce herself, just like last time, the last candidate. They have 15 to 20 minutes to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about them, and then we're going to ask questions. Jill will stay right here in the cafetorium, and Beth will be in the media center, so we'll break up. All I ask is that the group kind of splits itself kind of in half, and then you can swap whenever you feel comfortable swapping and asking them questions about what you heard or about their experience. So, lastly, I want to remind people to fill out their feedback forms. That has been here for the people that are here. They are here. You can scan them, and we will be sending them out by email. There will be a link in the email, as well as the recordings for parents and community members to fill that out as well. So please fill out those feedback forms, as they're very valuable for the selection committee to review, and that's why we do this. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Jill at this time and give her time. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. Hi, virtual world. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to see you, and I'm really grateful to have some time with you tonight. Thank you, Mr. Furbush, for inviting me. I'm going to say the same thing I said with the staff. I'm very impressed with the process that the big school district is taking to find a principal for their elementary school. It's been extremely thorough. The fact that I'm here to answer your questions is really amazing, because you want to know who is going to be with your kids every single day. And so my time tonight, for those of you at home or here, my time tonight is going to be to tell you about myself. So if I were to be your principal, you would feel comfortable sending your child to be in this building with me. So that's what I'll do. So my name is Jill Lizier, and I've got a couple things I'd like to share with you. So who am I? So when I was thinking about what I want to tell you and to help make you feel comfortable with who I am and what I'm all about, I thought about how I spend my day and what I think about every day. And the number one thing is that I'm a mother. I wake up in the morning and I think about my family and my kids and what we've got going on in our schedule of the day. And then I also go right into thinking about my job, and in a good way, because I am also a professional and I'm an educator, and I know how important education is, and I know how much it takes to run a efficient and well-working school. So of course I'm thinking about that as soon as I get up in the morning. I'm also a family member, I'm a friend. I said this to the last group. I've got my best friend Katie that I talk to every morning while I'm on Bluetooth, not on my cell phone, but driving to work, drinking my coffee, just kind of keeping that relationship solid. It's all just a part of this wonderful world that makes me who I am. As you can see up here, I have St. Louis Arch right up there. That's where I was born. So if you want to know a little bit about me, I'm a person that has lived many different places. And I was born in St. Louis, moved to New York, New Jersey, Ohio, ended up in New Hampshire. I've been in New Hampshire for quite some time, I would say around 15 years now. Love New Hampshire, but I still have connections all over the country, and I'm very grateful for that. I attended UNH for my undergrad in political science and my master's in elementary ed, and then I went into teaching, and then I enrolled into Plymouth State University to get my educational leadership certificate of advanced graduate studies. So that's kind of just a little bit of my background there. So when I think about what's the most important part of me and what you should know about me, it really is my family. And just like everybody here, virtually or in person, your family is what makes you you. And I want you to know that my husband Christian and my two girls are the world to me. They understand how important my profession is, and they help me and they listen to me, but I also give them an equal amount of love and support. So if they're watching at home, hi. So that's Christian. He, great guy, best friend. And then Elle is 8, almost 8, and then Jane is 4 years old. And this was a recent outing we had. We went into Boston, and it just felt like so good to have an adventure like that. We're adventurers. We like to experience life together. We argue, we fight, we laugh, we joke. Just nice time. That's me. All right. So this is like the meat and potatoes of my presentation to you tonight. You're probably wondering, what am I going to bring to Epping Elementary School besides the fact that I love my family and I talk to my best friend Katie. I have a very strong dedication to education. And if you take a look at the highlights here, I kind of like mapped you through some of the things that have brought me to this place today. So started off being a first grade teacher at Memorial School in Newton, New Hampshire, under a very strong leadership team, very strong educators that I could learn from. And I'm telling you the 100% truth that I am where I am today because of the administrators that I worked under, and I saw what good leadership looks like, as well as the teachers that were right next door to me, and I could just like hear Mrs. McDougall teaching her first graders next door. I'm like, oh, that's good, I'm gonna do that. And so gathering from my experts around me have really helped me be who I am today. And then obviously shape it on my own. So as first grade teacher, I loved it. I loved working with parents, I loved working with kids. I was really interested in curriculum and alternate ways to assess students. I knew that we had really strong curriculum and assessments, but I wanted to make like more real life hands-on activities for students. And so I really dug into the performance assessments is what we call it. And that's just some really great ways we can have students demonstrate what they know, but through something that like makes sense to them, and it's real life and fun and exciting. So I kind of like developed my niche in that, which led me into curriculum. So I worked at Swayze Central School for about 3 years as their curriculum coordinator. And for all of the parents out there that you might have a kindergartner, you might have a 4th grader, you might have a 2nd grader and a 5th grader, those 3 years at Swayze really helped me understand the span of which a curriculum needs to go, right? Like, so I can understand the connection between 1st and 5th grade. I can see the trajectory that we really wanted to paint for our students. And that position allowed me to really dig deep into that scope and sequence, but also find like the best resources out there and understand what was available for students and what worked and what didn't work. So being in that and learning from those around me and just like being able to support the teachers in having the time to find those resources and understand the 1st, 2nd, all the way to 5th grade curriculum has really helped me in my path as an educator. So now, fast forward to now, and I'm an assistant principal, and I'm a special education building coordinator. Been there for 3 years. I went back to that school that I started in 1st grade, and I've enjoyed this leadership opportunity immensely. As special ed building coordinator, I get to work with our amazing paraprofessionals and case managers and related service providers and really see how they can provide such a meaningful education to our students and just how we integrate all that into our classroom. So having that dual like leadership, admin piece, and special ed coordinating piece, I feel like I'm bringing a lot of expertise and knowledge to the table if I were to be the principal for Epping Elementary School. I'm very happy and lucky for the people that I work with there, but as an educator, I'm ready to kind of try and move on to that next step of principalship, where I can be an instructional leader as well as that like community partnership with parents and say, this is what we're doing here, this is how that works at home, tell me about what's going on at home, how can I partner with you in the community? And that is a very important piece that I get to do right now, but I want to do it all the time. And I'm just saying that because I think that's probably, if you're looking up here, you're probably wondering, okay, well, why are you deciding to move to a principalship right now? And that's kind of the connection that I'm making. If you take a look at the last two things, those are my wonderful opportunities that I have, that I get to work with other educators around the world and in New Hampshire. As you can tell, maybe, hopefully, I really like to talk. I like microphones. I like to work with all different types of people. I like to learn from everybody. It's like literally the first thing I said when I started. I learned from those around me. And I think I do a really good job at it. So with my education expertise and the way that I like to work with people, I do some consulting where I get to work in other buildings and help schools make changes in their building, work on scheduling, work on assessment, work on integrating general education and special education together. And I do that through those bottom two pieces there, solution tree, and then some consulting in New Hampshire as well. And I don't want to not talk about that piece, because I think that piece is what makes me an effective leader and communicator, and that's what you want in a principal for the community. You want somebody that will communicate with you and listen to you and will hear what you're saying, and maybe not come up with a solution, but continue that communication until we can find a solution. So those are my highlights, and that's my path. And thank you for smiling and listening. It's really nice to be here with you. Put a couple fun facts up here. I did that because, again, you want to know who I am. Who's this lady that might be in the building with my child? So these are some fun facts that kind of make me who I am. Like I said, my family, my friends, but some cool things I've done. I have been to Brazil. I was invited to go and present on performance assessments, so talking about how we can assess students in different and real life ways. I was able to go there and talk to educators in Brazil, and it was an unbelievable experience. I'll never forget it. I'll probably talk about it forever. Very honored that I got to do that. And then the other thing, the Supreme Court, not because I worked there or anything, but I lived in Washington, D.C. for a little bit, and as my undergrad, I was a political science major, and I spent, I would say 3 months as a lobbyist intern down there. Definitely didn't want to do that, but loved the city and felt like I learned a lot. So I bring those fun facts to the table, and I like to make that connection when I am talking with kids about some cool things I've done, and they get pretty excited about that. So what can we do together? The first thing I want to say is I would really want, and I said this in my first few interviews, I want to know what makes Epping proud and what makes students happy to come to school every day. What do they like? What makes them feel connected here? When talking with staff, we talked a lot earlier about what we can do together as a staff and as a team and build that climate and culture and work together to meet all students' needs. We talked about structures that would do that. We talked about how I'm a partner with them, and we want to build a community of just lifelong learners. With parents and the grown-ups at home for students, what we can do together is really communicate effectively with each other so that we can make sure our students feel safe, comfortable, and happy to come to school. I talk to parents a lot as an assistant principal, and I often say, thank you so much for partnering with me today with this conversation. Whether it be a conversation on a tricky situation that the student had, or an exciting opportunity that we can offer to their child. I always start off with that, and that just is so true though. And I sometimes even have the student there to listen to that conversation. Like, hey, look at me, I'm talking to your grown-up at home about how we are going to partner together for you. And that is I found the most success with that. So if I was to be your principal, I would ask that you be my partner in that, and that we help our students just feel safe and successful in school. Excuse me. All right, so we're going to wrap it up with this, and I wanted to just finish my conversation with 4 words that define me as a leader. If I were to be your principal, these 2 words, listen and reflect, those are the things that I would do right away. A couple of you have asked me, like, what would be your action plan when you came, or how would you begin your principalship here in Epping? It really would have to be to listen and reflect. I can't go in and say, we're going to do this, we're going to make this change, we're going to start this initiative without understanding where we are and what strengths and wonderful things we have going on. Listen, and then reflect, like, okay, this seems like a great next step, or this is going well. And there's all different structures to do that. And I would just assure you that that's the type of leader that I am. I think somebody asked me in one of my interviews, like, what would be the hardest thing for you? And it would be that I would reflect a lot, and I just would. And it's good and it's bad, but it's needed if you are a leader. And the other pieces here, after I listen, I reflect, and communication is it's key with my leadership style. I've got quite a bit of feedback from my staff and from my parents that we're effective communicators, and they feel really valued when they know what's going on, and there's no gotcha moments. So that would be another key point of my leadership ability that I would bring into Epping. And then the last thing is to believe, and I do say this with all my truth, that I believe in public schools so much. I believe in all the students that walk in the door, and it is tricky sometimes with all the other stuff going on in the world, but I absolutely believe to be here for the students, to serve all of the students, to be their principal, to be their teacher, to be their peer model, or not peer model, but be that same person that they feel like they can trust when they come in the building. So these 4 words are what I live by every day, and I hope that you listening at home or here kind of have an understanding of who I am as a person, okay? And if you have any questions, I will be here. Come and talk to me. And at home, if you have any questions, send Mr. Ferber's email, and he'll send that to me. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start. Okay. Yeah. I'm curious, and I heard you talk about the role models that helped you in your early days. So, as a building leader, as an administrator, how do you encourage risk-taking, innovation, and how do you encourage your teachers to become leaders themselves and follow a similar path?
All right. So, how do I encourage my staff members to become leaders? Amazing question, and it's about finding. So, there's a couple ways. I always talk about answers in 2 ways. One of them is like your structures you have in place that allow for that, but then also the way that you act with people. So the structures in place to allow for leaders are to make sure you have your team leader group in your school. So you have something where teachers can, show that leadership skills that they're exploring. Having collaborative time for teachers to meet and allow teachers to have time to kind of push the limits a little bit with their leadership abilities. So just like having that in place in school. And then also knowing your staff very well and know where the strengths are. That's the most important piece, because selfishly, I use that very often, because if I make sure I know who has certain strengths, when we are going through a tricky time with either students, technology, finding a resource, I know my staff so well that I can ask them that. And then build them up and say, you are so great at this. Can you share this with somebody else? Would you feel comfortable pushing this information out to people? So I think having your structures in place, but also knowing your staff really well, so you can encourage that. And I've certainly have had conversations with people. In fact, I recently had one about a month ago where I said, I noticed this in you. Like, you have the ability to run a meeting really efficiently and like be extremely organized. You'd be really good at this. Is there something that I can do to support you in that? Is that interesting to you? Because I know for me, when I was a teacher, when I felt valued and that somebody noticed something I was good at, it made you feel good. It's just like normal human stuff. When somebody tells you you're good at something, that makes you feel good and you want to do more of it. That's how I was always treated. And that's what I would want to do for others.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's a really good question.
Can you explain a little bit about this other job that you have? As we're looking for a principal, but we want somebody that's there every day. Will this take you out of our building?
No, I'm glad you asked that. And I was always really cautious of putting that information out there, but I want people to know that that helps me be who I am. It's not another job. I mean, I do some of that during breaks. I'll do some of that during some summertime, but it's not like a full-time or not even part-time job. It's like a couple visits that I might do with a school. And I also use it as like a professional development piece for myself because I'm able to see what other schools are doing. Like, yes, I am guiding them and providing information to them, but I'm also learning about what they do as well. And I want to highlight that I have that amazing opportunity to do that. I think I have the expertise to be able to do that, and you should know that like I'm somebody that can do that, but also then I also have the ability to learn that much and bring that back to Epping as well. But it's certainly not anything like another job at all. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and so I've
So do you take time out of the school calendar year to go to their schools?
most of the time it's during a break, like a winter break.
Okay,
Yeah.
because they don't have those.
Yeah.
You mentioned
Yeah.
about working in Arizona.
Yeah,
And
their
so
breaks
they have
are a little bit
different
different.
timeline.
Yeah, and I won't do it, and I'll say no. I say no, I can't. I'll just kind of
Okay,
be able to choose what fits my schedule best.
thank
Yeah.
you. Appreciate
And
that.
I'm very transparent and clear with that, with the people that I work with, and just say, what's a good balance? What can I do? Can't do that? Sounds good with me. Like that's just kind of like, I don't want to say it's my fun thing because I take it very seriously, but like this is my job.
I understand.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
I was wondering if you could speak about how you think your time as a curriculum coordinator and a special ed director will be of help to you coming in as principal at an elementary school.
Absolutely. So those times as curriculum coordinator and special ed coordinator, which I am now, are at an elementary school. They help me because I have the background knowledge. When you have to make decisions or have conversations with an individual or staff about a situation, it's hard to play catch up if you're not really familiar with the situation. I feel like I'm living it right now. I've lived it as a curriculum coordinator. Doesn't mean I know everything, but I know what to anticipate. I know what questions to ask, and that helps me make better decisions or ask the right questions. So I just feel like if my brain was like a filing cabinet, I'm like filling in, my filing cabinet is full so that when I need to pull from something, I at least have like some schema to pull from. Like, okay, so you're having a hard time with, let's say, you're having a hard time with this reading program that you're in. So I've had experience with that before. I kind of know what that is like. How can I help you? Do we need to take a step back? Do we need more resources? Do we need professional development? I've kind of been through those situations before, so I can offer suggestions or ask the right questions to find a solution. It's like it fills up my filing cabinet.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
How do you plan to bring a sense of stability to the school? So for better or worse, like we all know the last 2 years have just been an absolute nightmare
Yeah.
for everyone involved. But there's been a lot of turnover in the school here, and the kids who started kindergarten last year don't know what a real school year looks like, right?
Yeah.
So how do you plan to kind of address that going forward? Hopefully things will calm down COVID-wise, but
Yeah.
all of the other issues that we've had as a school system with teachers leaving and administrators leaving.
Yeah, it's what you want for your kids, right? You want stability. I think that you start with trust. So you need to I would just make sure that the students knew who I was and I was a safe person in their school that can help them. And I do that by just like being present, being, not just at drop off and pick up, but also in the hallways, in the classrooms. And I don't want to like misspeak and start a new tradition. I want to know what the traditions are for this school and kind of like build into them, but also do things that maybe build more of a community. So if we could start building in school assemblies, maybe not like a whole school, but maybe one grade level at a time, just like showing that we are one when we come here. And that makes kids feel really good. Because it's been shaky. I think you're right. My kids feel it. I feel it where I am right now. And I think we just have to kind of get back into that routine of you come to school, we have Spirit Week, we have assemblies, I learn, I have friends. There's Mrs. Lizier over at lunch eating with second grade. Kind of like build in that regularness.
Yeah, good enough.
Just build in the regularness of it. And you can only do it by just being present and being there. And that really is it. Thank you. Anybody have any
If I
other?
can ask you to expand on that thought, because the COVID issue is one whole element. However, let's throw into that the fact that we've had numerous administration changes, some pretty more extreme than usual staff turnovers in the last couple of years as well.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of, I feel like that adds another level to that need for trust and things. So
Yeah.
can you expand it all on that answer, taking that administrative?
Yeah, you want
element
somebody
into
that's going to
piece.
be here and be here and do those things with students, and you can't just like do them in 1 year. So you want somebody that will be here to build those relationships, and that takes more than a year. So like the first year is just like getting around in the building and people know who you are and your name, but you're not starting to build that consistency unless you're here year after year. And then people will leave, right? Staff leave, that happens, and I always encourage people to take their professional journey. I respect that. I like when people are honest with me, but there are things you can control so people won't leave, and that is being an effective communicator and being transparent and having trust. That is how you keep that climate and culture in a positive light. Things will be hard, but if people feel like they're listened to and valued, they'll more likely than not stay. There'll always be people that go on, but I think there's things you can do to keep more people to stay, and I would want that too for my child, absolutely. And it's a hard time right now for that. I know there's a lot of change going on. I know that it is difficult to find people for positions right now. I'm experiencing it right now. And the only saving grace really is, the principal I work with, he's amazing as well, is your communication and your transparency and your ability to sit down with somebody and say, what's going on? How can I support you? And if somebody leaves, hopefully it's for a reason to expand their professional journey or a family situation. It's not because they don't feel valued. Thanks. It's a solid question right there, because it's what we're all thinking about. Yep.
We have a lot of taxpayers that are upset because they look at the scores that the state provides for how our youngsters do on testing. Yeah. And I've heard so many remarks about elementary school. The scores are so low. The scores are low in the district. What are you people doing about that? And I know there's a big rush in the elementary school right now to improve literacy.
Yep.
Which I totally believe in.
Okay.
Do you have ideas for us to improve those scores?
I like when people start talking about data, and I appreciate that. I think that it is a point that you can just say, the clear black and white, like this is where we are. And I think it's fine to take a look at it and say, wow, we have room for improvement. You need to be specific about what your improvement is, though. And if it's literacy, I would say, okay, let's dig a little bit deeper. Where is it in literacy? So you can look at, you have all different types of scores you can look at. You can look at your state testing scores, certainly, and I would, and that's a serious score to look at. But I'd want to take a look at the other scores that we have in our school. And I was just briefly looking in your office, and I see you have an assessment calendar. The school does has amazing assessment calendar, which means they do Fontes and Pinnell running records. They have common assessments that they do. I would want to look specifically at those scores, and that will help me determine where in literacy do we need improvement. Is it in the guided reading piece? Is it in the phonics piece? Is it writing? For math, is there a certain category within math that students are really struggling with? Maybe it's geometry, and maybe it's because we don't teach geometry until the end of the year, and that's why our scores are going down. Maybe we need to teach geometry a little bit earlier in the year. So let's see if I answered. The answer to your question is, yes, scores are low, and there's lots of reasons why they're low. But we can just look at it. Let's spend enough time let's spend the appropriate amount of time looking at the low scores, but then actually doing something about it and deciding and looking deeper at the other assessments we have to figure out what our action is going forward, because that's the only way you're going to make change. And I would say to my teachers and my staff, okay, let's all come and let's dig apart your most recent math assessment. Where are kids struggling? Is it because we need to spend more time on it, or is it because they missed the whole chunk of that instruction last year? So we're going to have to build that in somewhere. It's a lot of diving into what you have for evidence, but I know that Epping has the time available for teachers to do that in their professional learning community time. That's like a perfect thing to do during a PLC time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question for you.
Great.
I guess it'll be a two-part question. What level of involvement have you had with teacher evaluation so
Sure.
far in your career? And if it has been a lot, can you give an example of a time that you needed to work with a teacher or perhaps a group of teachers
Yeah.
on improving instruction?
Yeah, absolutely. So as an assistant principal, I do evaluate teachers. I use the district's evaluation method to do that. And it's, I go into classrooms, do walkthroughs, and give feedback right away on that. And so the structure that I use is I'll go into a classroom, I'll see if it is, it's not a transition, it's not snack time, and it'll be a great time to just spend some time in the classroom. And then I'll make sure I give feedback right away. And so I'll go and I'll send an email, say, thanks so much for having me in your room. I'll note something fun that I saw, oh, that was really, it's really cool when Bobby asked that question. It sounded like it was interesting conversation. If you'd like to hear more feedback about what I saw, please go in and there's a portal where people can view their walkthroughs and their evaluations. Now, there's always things to note. You just want to be really clear about what you observe. So I've observed this. And so if I go in and I always observe the same thing, and I always see the same thing, then I might have a follow-up question and just say, can you schedule a time to meet with me? I have a couple specific questions I want to talk to you about. How are you utilizing the support in your room? I noticed you have 2 other adults in your classroom at that time. Can you just tell me how you're using that support? And then, you'll ask really specific questions and then say, tell me a time you have 10 to 15 minutes so we can discuss this. And that's been the most successful way because, again, it feels like a partnership. I want to have a conversation with you, but then also as an administrator, you can start noticing trends that you might need to question or support the teacher in changing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Can I
you.
get one more?
You have another 4 or 5 minutes, and then if you haven't seen the other candidate, there's still time.
You clearly have a strong curriculum background
Yes.
and kind of the bones of the school.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about how you have encouraged, supported, championed those other things that kind of make a school unique, be it its unified arts programs or other special events that might be part of what makes it more than just the bones of the school?
Absolutely. A lot of that has to do with, 2 things. During our team leader group, I would always want to make sure we have somebody from our unified arts there, our guidance counselor, because at that time, as team leaders, we decide what our priorities for our school. So obviously it is the content areas and making growth and looking at data, but also it's allowing opportunities for our students that they might not always have in the classroom. It might be school-wide assemblies we want to have. It might be some sort of artist in residence that we want to bring into our building, and having our specialists be a part of those conversations help us decide what we prioritize for the year. It's extremely important because that is where a lot of our students find a lot of joy and they find something that they're passionate about. And I want to make a school, I want to have a school that's exciting for students and they feel like, oh, you know what, I can grow here. I never knew I was interested in coding, but in Miss so-and-so's STEAM class, I have learned about coding, and I think this is something that I want to do. And to go back to your other question, I tap a lot into my unified arts teachers for that. Like, hey, I noticed you have an expertise in this. How would you feel like supporting me in this venture that we have in our building? Like, there's so much connection into how a building is run and is put together. And unified arts teachers are just like a huge part of what makes a school. So thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Thanks
Really-
for spending time with us tonight.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Hi, everyone.
Please go meet the other candidates.
Hope this is like my good side. Like, what side are they looking at? So I'm here. If you have any questions, like, come on up. I feel like I can't move because like this is my speaking thing. That's a microphone. It is a pyramid microphone. Does anybody have any questions for me, or it's okay if you don't. I can talk more. Can tell you the things I'm excited about. Do you have anything specific you want to ask?
I'll share something with you just because you brought it up
Sure.
in your talk.
Absolutely.
A little connection we have.
We do.
I'm from the Midwest,
Where were you born?
Chicago.
Nice.
But also, you mentioned South America.
Yeah.
And I went to a college that had trimesters.
Mhm.
So I went to travel all over Central and South America for 3 months.
Wow.
So in your time in Brazil, I didn't get to go to Brazil, but I wanted to go to Iguaçu Falls.
No, I went to Sao Paulo and I was only there for 4 days, but it was amazing to be there. Yeah. Yeah.
My story, people do these meet and greets
Yeah.
where you have to say something crazy about yourself.
Okay.
Mine was from when I was in Ecuador. I almost froze to death at the equator, which is kind
Yeah,
of
that doesn't. Yeah.
yeah. Mount Cotopaxi
Okay.
is the second highest peak on the planet if you take into consideration the Earth is not a perfect sphere.
Yeah.
So I camped out at over 14,000 feet and prepared to die.
And like you'll take that forever
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
You'll share it with people. It'll be your fun
It's
facts.
about a mile
yeah.
or two from the equator.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'll ask, try and repeat when the
Robert, can I just,
Sure.
please, we just got feedback that you're doing great, but whoever's asking the questions, please just speak up so we can pick it up. Okay.
All right, let's see if I can remember exactly. Maybe you can set me straight if I go straight.
Okay.
It was basically a scenario. In our district right now, we've seen over years our performance on basically on standardized tests go down.
Okay.
Overall performances. And so, looking at the early grades and what we can do to help. The first part of the question then would be, what kind of ideas do you have to help these students perform better early
Okay.
on, so that this doesn't perpetuate into an exponential, more disastrous situation in high school?
Okay. Yep. So to make sure I understand your question, what do we do when we're taking a look at our state testing scores and you're not seeing them go in the direction you
Yeah,
want them
any
to go?
criterion reference test, not
Absolutely.
necessarily norm reference, but
Yeah. Yep.
just so we can actually say, someday maybe more than 60, 70, 80% of our students are meeting standard, which would be great.
So I did talk about this a little bit already, so I'm
So,
going,
yeah, sorry. I
and
was
that's
gonna-
okay. No, I just want to make sure that I answer it fully. So when we take, and I love that you're looking at scores, and I think you should. I think you should look at your state testing scores. I think you share them. I think you look at them with your staff. And when you look at them, you decide, okay, what does this information tell me? So if I'm taking a look at math proficiency scores and I look and I see 50% of our students who are proficient or above, that's a great starting point. But as an administrator, I would say, all right, we need to dig a little bit deeper. And what more information can I find out from this so that we can change our instruction? And you need to do a couple things. So and I mentioned this earlier, there's an assessment calendar that Epping has that I saw where you don't just have one assessment that you do at the end of the year. There's unit assessments, there's benchmarks. So if math is what we're looking at, let's look at the assessments that we have that support math, and let's dig into that data as well. And so when you take a look at student work, when you take a look at those more local assessments, you can start to identify where the gaps are. So you might see that, and I apologize that I'm repeating myself, but you might see that geometry is really low score on state testing. And then you take a look at your local assessments and you notice that maybe it's because you don't teach geometry until, or maybe you taught geometry in September and you never like circled back around to it and you did state testing in May. So you can make those tweaks by just digging a little bit deeper at it. And I would encourage my teachers to look at the state testing data, but really spend most of our collaborative time looking at our local data so that we can make a change the next day. You don't want to wait until the end of the year. And it's a great piece of information to look at, but if you notice it at your collaborative team time that 70% of your class got a certain section of an assessment wrong, then you can make that change, and teachers are extremely talented where they can make that change in their classroom, the next day. All right, I need to pull a small group and I need to do that for a week, and we're going to go over this piece of the assessment that they struggled with. So as an administrator, you need to make sure you allow time for that. You have consistent data and assessments to look at, whether it be something huge like a unit assessment or just a 2 or 3 question quiz that you can get instant feedback on and change. And if you consistently do that and then monitor your district-wide assessments like NWEA, I think that's what you guys do, you'll see your state test scores go up.
So that's a very good answer, and I'll tell you why. Because sure, you want to look at the criterion reference test as a first place, just sort of to gauge yourself.
Just the lay of the land.
But you have to keep in mind, as you indicated, the measurement part of that assessment. You're only looking at 5 to 8 points potentially.
Yeah.
You can't make drastic decisions based on just that. In fact, I could meet standard on the test and get every single geometry and measurements question wrong.
Yes.
Because of what happens at standard setting, right?
Yep.
So you touched on that very well. But if it is bad, then you have to go back and look at what you're doing, like you said, figure out if it's something we're doing or if it's timing. Maybe our school is teaching at the next year at the beginning.
Yeah.
So.
And that's what you can do as an admin or curriculum coordinator, because that state testing comes out in May.
Yeah.
So what actionable steps can a teacher do from May to June? A little bit, but you want to be doing that at the beginning of the year. So as like an admin or curriculum coordinator, then you take a look. Okay, wow, you're right. Everybody missed geometry. So I'm going to make sure I give that feedback like right at the beginning of the year. Like, guys, I looked at this. Take a look for yourself. What can we do to make some changes?
And as long as you're aware that, it's just the beginning piece to basically do a mystery yourself, a mystery.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to make $1 million curriculum decisions just on that, because it's just, like I said,
it's one piece of data.
5 or 6 multiple choice questions.
It's one piece of data, absolutely.
Only on area.
Yeah.
And don't even capture the whole thing.
Yeah.
The kids meeting standard as a whole.
Yeah.
The follow-up I would have is, my wife's a substitute here in the district for 10 years. One of the things she told me in her experience, and she was called basically every day. She subbed in this building nearly every day for 10 years. One thing that stands out very vividly to her is in these first grades, whether it's kindergarten or first grade, you have a large percent of children coming in to the game here in school, their education career. Some know the letters and the numbers and the words they're supposed to, and a large percent might not recognize a single letter.
Yes.
How are we going to deal with that as a community?
Yeah.
And so that this does not perpetuate into an exponential problem as they get moved along from grade to grade.
Kids enter kindergarten at all different ways. And I am going to say, some kids come into kindergarten not knowing their letters or their numbers yet, but they come in with like amazing social skills. They come in with the ability to listen, to love books, because that might have been their world at home. Okay, so I know that that is the reality, that everybody enters at different strengths, different weaknesses. I think that you make sure you're having some benchmarks where you want students to meet in kindergarten. And when students aren't meeting those benchmarks, and you're not doing it right at the beginning of the year, but you're giving it some time. So in kindergarten, typically, we might take like some informal data when kids come in, but then we'll do our instruction and have like a benchmark around October and say, we really hope at this time, we know that kids are on the right path if they know their numbers up to 20 at this point. And the students that don't, and maybe it's the students that came in not knowing their numbers, but they just picked it up really quickly. You never can tell. They're amazing little beings. But when you have the benchmarks of what you expect and what you would help that trajectory, then you can put your interventions in when students aren't meeting it. And interventions can be a person, but interventions can also be the teacher, because they're talented and they're able to like pull a small group and say, these students haven't met that yet, but I can arrange my classroom so I can pull a small group at this time and help them meet that benchmark and kind of close that gap. So, and this only happens when you have a kindergarten, I'm just saying kindergarten because you did, when you have a kindergarten team that have met and decided what are those benchmarks. And they've said, we as educators feel like this is where we expect students to be, and if they're not, this is what we're going to do. And you have a curriculum coordinator as well that supports that. And just those practices will help you find students as early as kindergarten that might need a little bit extra help to get on the right trajectory. Yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if I answered everything.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. I mean, and you also have kids that come into kindergarten that can like read whole books.
Yeah.
And that's great. And then what do you do in your classroom to meet all the needs? I mean, I've seen some pretty amazing kindergarten teachers. They've got book clubs, then they have students practicing their letters. I'm looking at you, first grade teachers, you're still doing it. I did it too. And then schools also have interventionists or teachers that can push in during certain times of the day. You just want to use them effectively. Like, oh, I know that Miss Parker is coming in from 1 to 1:30 to support literacy. I'm going to have her work with this group of students to get them to meet that benchmark.
Okay. Well, thank you for applying.
Yeah, thank you for the questions.
And
Yeah.
for past questions again, we can talk about South America.
Yeah, have some empanadas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hungry.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Okay,
It's been a tough, almost 2 years with COVID.
okay.
We've been very
Yes.
fortunate in the fact that our kids have been in person in school. Last year, whereas many other places were not. But at the same time, it was certainly a different type of teaching than what we all have seen pre-COVID in our
Yeah.
own lives and all that. What do you think? I mean, we're still discovering the effects of what COVID is on these children and how it affected their education. And do you think that what we might have considered a benchmark in 2015 for a third grader, when we're looking at third graders in 2022, do we need to reevaluate where they've been and going forward?
It's a good question.
It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question because we do have those state tests, right?
Mhm.
We do have things that haven't stopped yet, that have said like this is what we're doing, this is where kids should be. I don't think that there's any harm in keeping the benchmarks of what they are and changing your instruction based off of that information, because you might find that some students have surpassed it. But if you find that, okay, all these students should know numbers 1 through 20 by October, and they don't, then you're not going to move forward because you can't. You need to address that immediately. And if that makes you behind, then it does. But you weren't going to get anywhere without addressing that in the moment, okay? We owe it to our students to give them a curriculum and instruction that is rigorous, that is grade level expectations, and I think you can do that but you also need to honor where they are and also have time built into your day where you can maybe close some of those gaps that you're talking about. And so what does that mean? Maybe you have your 10-minute mini lesson that's on the grade level expectations. You're exposing everybody to what you are, what is at grade level at that time, and then you're breaking off into small groups and meeting students where they are, because that's where they are, and they're not going to get to that expectation without addressing those concerns. You do need to expose students to grade level expectations, but you don't need to do it for the whole 45-minute period if that's not where your class is showing you where they are. And that's just a conversation that has to happen with staff and students and looking at student work. And you can't just make that assumption. I would want to say what shows us that they're not ready for it? Is it all students that aren't ready for it? Is it 5 or 6 students that aren't ready for it? Just be really specific about what we are saying.
Okay. Completely unrelated.
That's okay.
Question.
Great.
So going on what Robert had said about where kids are and where they're progressing, and kindergarten, you have some kids come in and they they haven't learned anything yet. You have other kids that are coming in reading. As a competency-based school where we really need to meet these kids where they are, what are your thoughts for our kids that are coming in, or even a couple years in, you see that they have a real strength? Typically, you notice these in math and in language arts. It always seems to be easier because math is very linear. You know if someone's understanding all this, and you're like, okay, we need to move them into the next grade level up.
Yeah.
It's not always as easy to see that for in LA classes. What are your thoughts on meeting these kids where they need and moving them out of their class that they might be in into a higher level class, and moving our kids throughout the curriculum levels, as opposed to, our teachers do an amazing job of differentiating within a classroom, but sometimes you've got kids that really are doing grade level work 1 or sometimes 2 levels higher.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to keep them within their group or to move them up?
And that's where I would bring that up with my team leader group and say, this is a priority for us this year. A priority for us is to kind of expand our ability to meet students where they are. What's the reality? How can we do this in the classroom? And there's lots of different ideas that might come up. We could come up with. But one is maybe having some set blocks during your day where you can flood those blocks of time with different professionals that can help meet students where they are. So if I'm a 2nd grade teacher and I know from this block of time during the day, I have all my other 2nd grade teachers. I also have additional staff members that are qualified to teach at that time. Then we can split students up based off of the student work that we just looked at, and provide that extension, that reteaching, that looking at a problem a different way type of time. And those types of times are called all different things in schools. People call it win time. I'm sure maybe you've heard that before. Yeah. So that's one way, as a group, we'd say, is this a feasible way for us to kind of meet that priority that we've said we want to meet kids where they are? If it is, we need to collectively as a school decide these aren't just my students, these are our students. Because if I'm going to open up my day and accept kids from other classrooms, I need to be able to look at the student work of that child so I know where to meet them. And I need to be able to also gain the trust of my colleagues that I'm going to, teach the students that are in your homeroom and expand. And that really is the backbones of the PLC culture, that they're not just your students, they're our students. And that really is what will push a school to be competency-based. You can't do it by yourself. You're right, a teacher can differentiate in amazing ways in the classroom, but even with that, he or she would still need the information from their colleagues of what grade level expectations are in moving students forward or taking a step back.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Because I get to ask the last one.
Heather did a good job of reminding me of what my third questionnaire was. It was very similar.
You gotta be back, Mike. I'd like the mic, please.
It's like town hall.
Could
So,
people hear me at home and see me?
I guess I'll go ahead and ask it, even though it's essentially the same question.
Okay.
But I'll give you the scenario just to be
Okay.
fair.
Yep.
Say you have a fourth grader
Yes.
who excels at writing and maybe not as strong in math. I've already touched on this a little bit, just to be fair, I'm asking. What would you do to have that student, would you be okay with that student having math in third grade, being in fourth grade most of the day, and then potentially fifth or sixth grade language arts class? And I know you already answered,
no.
so just keep it.
I want to talk about two things there. So
Okay.
when we talk about, and this is a question a lot of people talk about, when we say a student that's doing third grade in math, are we talking about a student that is in every single topic on third grade in math, but are they demonstrating skills on a third grade level in a certain unit? And if so, then we use our time.
It's more complicated.
No, but because you don't want to just say that student's great in writing. You have to really dig in. We have to get specific with it. And the reason you get specific with where that student might need some reteaching is because that's how you know your teaching will be effective. If you just say having a hard time in math and you instruct that student on something that they're not having a hard time with, they're not going to make those gains. So you certainly might have a student for maybe a unit or two, might be in a group of other students that are on a third grade level in fourth grade, but they might not always be based off of the assessments that you're looking at. And then when you do that, that student gets the targeted instruction that they need to continue to close that gap, to make progression, to meet grade level standards, and then above if possible.
More realistic might be if someone moves into Epping
Yes.
as a fourth grade student
Okay.
by age,
Yes.
wherever they lived, they were in third grade before. So after a few months, you realize this kid's on track in most things in fourth grade, but
Yeah.
doesn't know anything from what we're expecting our third graders in this state. But on the other hand, is way beyond fifth grade
Mhm.
in writing. So that might
Yeah.
be more realistic scenario.
Yeah, and it might be.
This is more, in some sense, this is like a middle high school question too.
It's not, and it's happening, and it would be an individualized conversation. So if I have a student come in and I'm just seeing abilities and demonstration of knowledge that is all over the place, it would be a conversation that I would need to bring in, not just me on, but the parents and perhaps the classroom teacher, guidance counselor, and like what's the best choice for this student right now and what do we need to do. Because if it's beyond just, if it's a trickier situation than that, it's not just a me answer.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I thought it'd be fair since she made it pop back in my head.
yeah,
Since I asked it.
yeah.
Great question, Robert, and it really points out why the traditional age-graded model, I'm talking loud enough, I'm sure. The age-graded model has some deficiencies when you have children at these different levels. So the last question, and we're gonna get out of time, and the other candidate is being asked the same question is, what makes you the best candidate for Epping, and why should we choose you?
I know I can do this job. I know I can. And I'm not saying that because I think I'm amazing and wonderful. It's because I do love myself, but I mean it because I love education, and I believe in it so very much. And I can do this job because I'll show up every day, I'll communicate with you, I will listen to you, and I will make sure that it's a partnership that benefits the students. And if it's something that I feel like I might not be able to tackle, I will gather my resources and I will make sure that I am effective in my decision making. I know I can do it. I believe in public school wholeheartedly and taking care of our children and being the best administrator and leader for them that I can. And I love working with teachers very much. So that is my answer.
Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for the multiple hoops we've had you jump through.
Yeah.
So that concludes our public forum. So thank you for giving us all this time.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Tom, for setting it up and getting